Hey everybody, welcome to the show. Around the Nation right here, TYT Nation. I'm your host, Jeff Waldorf. Got a great show for you guys today as we go around the nation for some of the best stories and progressive political commentary that you can find on the internet and around the nation. So, welcome to the show. Like I said, great show today. We do have the obligatory Trump damage control that we're going to talk about. Then we've got some other topics. We're going to talk about a study on suicide. And then we're going to talk about the Flint water crisis, development on that as well. And then we have some corporate welfare to talk about. Yep, those corporations in their greedy welfare, again, costing another state lots and lots of money. We've got the breakdown, where it is, and why it matters. So there's sort of your breakdown today. Again, we do have a couple of obligatory Trump stuff to get through, but it's serious stuff. It's, oh my God, what has Trump done to the country today? Literally, the first story is Donald Trump is in the Republican Party. They're coming after art. They're coming after art. Yeah. And there's probably this guy out there named Art. It's like, what? Me? No, what? Donald Trump's coming after me? No, he's not coming after you. He's coming after the arts. So, and then, of course, he's going to make it easier as well, and I've got the breakdown here of that, to allow corporations to pollute your rivers and your air. Oh, great. So, make America polluted again, essentially, is what we've got going on here. So, that's the stories that we have today. Some of them. Now, before I get into them, I want to thank the patrons, of course, for making the show possible. Patreon.com/TYTNation. If you want to help out truly independent progressive media, you can always go there and become a patron. Help out. $1, $5, doesn't matter. Anything helps. Helps keep me afloat and help keep this show independent and corporate free, corporate sponsor free. Because, again, there's nothing worse than being, sponsored by somebody. And, some people are like, well, no, wait a minute. I want to be sponsored by somebody. That means I get money. Yeah, but then you have to hawk a product in front of the camera. No, not interested. And not my thing. So I don't want to do that. I want to depend, of course, on you guys. And that's what the whole Patreon thing is really all about, is depending on you guys for funding the show. So for those who have signed up and are patrons right now, thank you so much. If you want to be a patron, I would recommend it, but you don't have to be. So, but I thank the ones who are. For everybody else, you can, of course, support, show your support for the show by liking and sharing this stream. That helps out tremendously, getting this video out to everybody. So share with your friends, share with your family, share with anybody who's interested in knowing what's going on. What the hell is going on in politics today? As Donald Trump would say, what we got to stop. We got to know what the hell's going on. We got to know what the hell's going on. So that's what we're here for. So again, what is going on today? Donald Trump after the arts. Oh boy. So Donald Trump, with the help of the Republican Party, is now coming after the arts, and they are bringing an axe. Now, the New York Times is reporting that the new Republican budget put forward by the Budget Office, who is now chaired by Republican Mick Mulvaney, a guy who's, of course, famous for wanting to cut Social Security. So that guy's now in charge of the Budget Office. They said that they will be cutting funding to a lot of different domestic programs in order to save money. Now, again, this is not really surprising because of their previous record on, hey, let's cut everything that we don't like. And that's what they do. They get into office. They cut a bunch of programs after destroying, blowing a hole in the federal budget with all their tax cuts and military spending. I'll get to that in a minute. And then end up cutting any sort of social program or any sort of funding for education in the arts. So that's what's happening here. This is your standard Republican move. So congratulations, Donald Trump, for becoming a standard Republican when you claimed to not be. But we all know that was full of shit. Now, This is interesting because some of the programs, a lot of the programs actually that are going to be cut, actually don't really add much to the federal budget. And that's really their argument for trying to cut these programs. Well, they're so expensive. We just can't afford all this waste, man. All this waste on the arts and stuff. Oh, no, we got to cut that so that we can give tax cuts to millionaires and billionaires and more money to the military that we don't need. So that's their reasoning. Now, the Times has a list of several programs that have been singled out for cuts. One of them, interestingly enough, is the White House's Office on National Drug Control Policy. Now, what that does is that it basically dispenses grants out to with the aim of reducing drug use and drug trafficking. So what this would do is that it gives out grants to try to figure out ways to get people to not use drugs and to stop drug trafficking. Now, correct me if I'm wrong here, but Donald Trump recently made a huge deal about drug traffickers. We got to stop the drugs from coming in. We're going to build a wall. It's going to be big. It's going to stop the drug traffickers. Well, that's funny because, first of all, the wall's not going to stop shit. Narco submarines, tunnels, airplanes, fucking catapults. I think they're prepared for you. They can defeat your wall. Just saying. And again, there's numerous ways that drug traffickers can get drugs into the country. Now, if you take away the funding to try to figure out how to stop all the other ways that they can get into the country, or drugs can get into the country, or what we can do, and look, let's be honest, we already know the answer on how to stop drug trafficking. You legalize, and you regulate, and you tax. You instantly destroy the cartels. They'll have to go to something else. But hey, don't listen to me, I'm just a lib. So, but whatever. But the whole thing is, other than drug trafficking, of course, reducing drug use. Now, I'm in favor of reducing the usage of drugs, especially prescription drugs, because right now, the Midwest is in a little bit of a opioid epidemic, where, white people mainly have been overprescribed powerful narcotic prescription drugs. They get hooked on it, then they lose their prescription, then they end up going to heroin. So massive, massive epidemic. So what the Trump administration does, even though they made a big deal about, oh my God, the epidemic, we've got to do something about this. Whoops. Oh, we just pulled the funding. Or we're going to pull funding from this program that actually would help with that. Fantastic. Great. Now, another thing that they have is the National Endowment of the Arts. Another thing on the chopping block. But hey, who needs the arts anyway? All it does is just help people with creativity and critical thinking. Republicans don't want that. Can't have that. No critical thinking allowed on our watch. No. We love the poorly educated. So that's another thing on the chopping block, of course. Another interesting choice of programs to cut is the Appalachian Regional Commission. Now, what this is it's an independent agency aimed at developing in some of the poorest parts of the country, which would be one of them at least would be Appalachia, or Appalachia, or however you say it. This is one of the places that Donald Trump successfully campaigned in and won. He won coal country. He won Appalachia. But no. We're gonna take away funding from an independent agency that is looking to develop these parts and maybe, create opportunity for these people in places that have been left behind. Let's pull funding from that. That is considered waste by the Trump administration. Not only that, but again, you have the National Endowment for the Humanities. Don't care about humanities, right? And the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. This has been a long-time conservative target. They've been salivating at the chance to kill Big Bird for years, for decades, since Newt fucking Gingrich. I don't know. Did Big Bird give him the side eye or something like that? I don't know. Bert and Ernie? Maybe they're a little too gay for Newt and the rest of Republicans. They want to destroy it. Other agencies include the budget office list of cuts. I'm sorry, the other agencies the budget office wants to cut include the Overseas Private Investment Corporation and the Corporation for National Community Service, which finances programs run by AmeriCorps and Senior Corps. Now, the memo also proposed reducing funding for the Neighborhood Reinvestment Corp., a nonprofit organization focused on urban development. Again, let's not create any opportunity for people in urban areas. Because you know what urban means. Black. Let's not fund that at all. Now, again, all these programs and more that Donald Trump and the Republicans are going after that are in this memo of cuts, well, together, all lumped in together, they cost about $2.5 billion annually. Now, look, that sounds like a lot of money. Yeah, and it is. Now, to put it in context, though, our budget is $4 trillion a year. These programs that are vital to a lot of people, well, they're a drop in the bucket compared to the budget itself. To put it in context, there's some numbers here. All these programs cost about 0.0625% of the projected 2017 budget. My, what savings you have found here, Republicans? You only had to screw over the arts and people with addictions and people in Appalachia and other places in order to get it. But hey, look at those savings, man. 0.625%. Nailed it. Budget savings. But hey, you got to save that money, right? The waste. No. This isn't about stopping waste. This isn't about fiscal responsibility. Now, Republicans despise these programs because they actually do things, either by educating people or helping them in some way. But again, when Republicans look at this, they say waste, fraud, and abuse. Everything is waste except for tax cuts, because those are great. We love tax cuts for the rich. Doesn't make any sense, does it? Now you have Steve Bell, who's a former staff director of the Senate Budget Committee, who is now with the Bipartisan Policy Center. He said the programs identified in the memo are standard targets for Republican budget cutters, but of little significance in the government's financial picture. He said, quote, "It's sad in a way because those programs aren't causing the deficit. These programs don't amount to a hill of beans." Again, to Republicans, well, they're coming to stomp on your hill. Spending money on the arts and poor people, waste. It's a waste. They don't realize that, or maybe they do actually, that the majority of our waste is in our bloated military. We spend about $600 billion a year on the Pentagon. And look, it's not like it's going to the troops. It's not. The majority of this is spent on giant contracts for tanks and ships and planes that we don't necessarily need. We don't need them, especially at a time where we're pulling out of different wars. And here we have Trump and the rest of the Republicans saying, we're going to increase military spending. We're going to increase the military. We're going to make it bigger. In fact, Trump said in an interview with Fox News last month, a balanced budget is fine. But sometimes you have to fuel the well in order to really get the economy going. Well, what does that mean? Fuel the well. It means more military spending. He said, quote, "I want a balanced budget eventually, but I want to have a strong military. So military comes first." Now, I think that should concern everybody. You see, we already have the world's strongest military. You don't build up an even bigger military on top of that unless you plan on using it. That is the conventional wisdom. And it's not as if Republicans haven't thought about bringing a little freedom to Iran. No, they think about it a lot. Oh, what a disaster. And that's my fear. And of course, you notice whenever you have any discussions about spending more money in the military, nobody seems to ask, where's that money coming from? Who's going to pay for that? But look, when it comes to funding the arts or, funding people in Appalachia who need some, opportunity, well, we can't come up with that money. How are you going to pay for it? Oh, you want to expand education? It's going to be $75 billion a year? Oh my God. How are you going to pay for that? Oh, here, Pentagon. Here's another $600 billion a year. Have fun. Buy some planes and Abrams tanks you don't need. It's great. Again, universal education would cost $75 billion a year. But that is an investment into America's leaders, to the next generation of America, American leaders, businessmen, etc., etc. But no, we can't make that investment. Instead, we're going to buy some Abrams tanks. We're going to buy a plane that doesn't work. Ridiculous. Those are our priorities, man. Instead of spending on people who, are going to be creative and innovative, and they're going to create the next businesses, small and large, or creating opportunity for those people in inner cities, or actually making the arts available so that people can learn creative thinking. No, can't have that. And you know how we get that? We get that by funding education and the arts. The very things that Republicans have been trying to gut for very, very little gain. All this is to send a message that we don't like education, we don't like arts, all we like is war. All we like is tax cuts for already super rich people. If you think the Republicans are on your side, it should be pretty clear, if you're paying attention, that they are not. And it shows in their budget priorities. But hey, whatever. Don't listen to me. I'm just a liberal. All right. Anyway. The next horrible story. Now, later this week, Donald Trump is expected to announce his plans to roll back environmental protections in an effort to make America great again. Now, the Washington Post reports that President Trump is preparing several executive orders that will end Obama-era policies on climate and water pollution. So instead of making America great again, it's make America polluted again. So that's what this is. One executive order will instruct the Environmental Protection Agency to begin rewriting a 2015 regulation that limits greenhouse gas emissions from existing power plants. Now, the plan is known as the Clean Power Plan. Now, these limits directed every state to form detailed plans in order to reduce carbon emissions from such sources as coal-fired power plants, enough to decrease carbon pollution by about 1/3 by 2030 compared to 2005 levels. Now, there are a lot of coal plants that are like, oh, whoa, if you make me reduce my emissions, we're not going to be profitable at all. Well, that's because coal is a super dirty fuel. There's no such thing as clean coal. It doesn't exist. It's like a fucking unicorn. Not real. It's like the Bowling Green massacre. Not real. But again, clean coal, right? So they put these regulations into place, and they've been held up by the court, actually. So they actually weren't in action at this point yet. But it looks like they're not going to be in action. They're not going to be implemented because it looks like Donald Trump is going to eliminate the Clean Power Plan. So I guess, so much for that. So much for actually trying to do something about the environment that we could actually do. Now, again, his reasoning behind this is it's hurting the coal industry. Yes, not being able to pollute does hurt the coal industry. But I think it's one of those things that I think it's worth putting into place so that our air does not become dirty. Our water doesn't become dirty. And in fact, there is also stuff about water that's a little bit later on. Now, the executive action also instructs the Interior Department's Bureau of Land Management to lift a moratorium on federal coal leasing. So basically, the EPA is now in the hands of Scott Pruitt. Now, Pruitt, of course, is very, very big pro-energy guy. He is a fossil fuel shill. And so he's likely to eliminate that provision, essentially allowing companies to put more greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. Because, of course, 400 ppm of carbon in the atmosphere is obviously, it's not enough. No, the weird weather trends and every year of the climate the earth getting progressively warmer, not good enough. Not good enough. And of course, the second part of that will allow for, obviously, more digging of coal. Now, according to Bloomberg, Got ahead of myself there. Here's the thing, right? Before you cheer on these rules, rolling back these rules and saying, yeah, more coal, right? That means my job's coming back. Well, not necessarily. You see, the reason that the coal industry is dying is not because of Obama regulations. Sure, it doesn't make it easier, but coal was already in the downward slope because of competition from different energy sources. For example, you've got a natural gas glut, and you also have a oil glut that's happening as well. So all those things make coal a little bit more expensive. Not only that, but you also have wind and solar that are cheaper than coal. According to Bloomberg, unsubsidized solar is beginning to outcompete coal and natural gas on a larger scale. And notably, new solar projects in emerging markets are costing less to build than even wind project. Now, across the world, of course, in places where there isn't a lot of electricity, you still have fossil fuels that are the cheapest option in these developing countries. So, coal is still super cheap there. But when it comes to emerging markets, it's not as cheap. And actually, solar is a much better option because you have China jumping into the market, making a lot of solar panels, helping to fund different things. And of course, the cost of solar panels has also decreased as the technology has gotten better. So there's that. And of course, in countries that are more fossil fuel established, like America and some of the countries in Europe, it's a little bit more difficult for solar and wind to really get into the market because of the controlling established interests that are there, that are billion-dollar companies. But nonetheless, when it gets down to it, when you factor in environmental impacts, you still have wind power that is much, much cheaper than coal and other fossil fuels. So, I mean, there's this little economics for you. And look, when it comes to investing in solar and wind and other renewable energy, it's just smart because it pays for itself in the long run. Especially, again, when you factor in the environmental impacts. Now, of course, Pruitt, as I mentioned earlier, he's a fossil fuel shill. Didn't want to do any of this because, he works for the fossil fuel industry. That is his constituent. That is his main concern. Once he gets out of office, he's going to go back and probably get a fossil fuel lobbying job or something like that. But his whole purpose there, right now, at least when it comes to coal, is to use government to prop up a failing industry. Right now, coal is kind of like the horse and buggy business when the automobile came around. The automobile became cheaper and more efficient and better to make. And the horse and buggy guys are like, oh shit, we're running out of business. We're running out of time. We got to do something. And so I think Scott Pruitt and the Trump administration, the Republicans, they're kind of the last gasp of the coal industry, trying to reassert power. But now, the second order will instruct the EPA and the Army Corps of Engineers to revamp another 2015 rule, known as the Waters of the United States Rule. Now, that applies to about 60% of the water bodies in this country. That regulation was issued under the 1972 Clean Water Act, which gives the federal government authority over not only the major bodies of water, but also the wetlands, rivers, and streams that feed into them. And of course, Republicans have an issue with that as well, saying, oh, it's too much government power. And another major reason that they don't like it is because it affects development, as some farming operations on the grounds that these activities could pollute smaller intermittent bodies of water that flow into major ones. So again, they're saying, hey, farmers, you got to watch your industrial runoff or your farming runoff because you use a lot of pesticides. That stuff's going to seep into the water. That's why you can't be near these water sources. And some farmers are like, no, but it makes sense. I don't want you to regulate me. I don't want to be regulated because I don't want to be, I actually want to do whatever I want. So that's going to help me with my business. Now, as far as other development, well, that can mean putting a factory up near a water source. So, it's kind of like, go ahead and put your plant next to a river. I mean, what's the worst that could happen? Well, I don't know. Maybe industrial waste being dumped into the river, or an accident, perhaps. I mean, do you guys remember West Virginia's Freedom Industries? Freedom Industries was located right in the Elk River in West Virginia. Now, Freedom Industries was a chemical storage plant. Ended up leaking chemicals into the river, affecting over 300,000 residents. They couldn't drink their water. They had to go and get bottled water. They had no potable water source. That's the effect of being able to put whatever you want near water sources, rivers and streams and lakes, tributaries, etc. That's why they had this rule, to prevent more freedom industries. But no, can't do that. So basically, Republican plan is, let's just make it easier for companies to build near water and hope they won't dump their wastes or end up having it spill into a river. In fact, you know what? They kind of encourage dumping in a way. Let me explain. Trump signed legislation last week that would allow surface mining operations to dump waste in nearby waterways. So they're saying, not only are we going to eliminate some of these regulations, we're going to eliminate another one and say it is absolutely 100% okay for you to dump your runoff into the local river. Go ahead, into the water source. We don't give a shit. Whatever saves you an extra buck. He said by doing this, he was very, very eager to support coal miners. I don't really think that's supporting coal miners. Really, that's supporting the wealthy corporations that own the coal mines. See, when it comes to the miners, remember one of the recent things that Donald Trump had done, or one of the first things, is eliminate the health care for these coal miners. They don't care about this. And now that they're saying that these companies should be allowed to dump poison into the miners' drinking water, into these rivers. Great. Not only that, but of course, you also have clean air that's under attack as well. House has already passed legislation that would eliminate a BLM rule curbing the release of methane. Now, methane is much more potent than carbon dioxide. It doesn't stay in the atmosphere as long, but its effects are far more potent when it comes to climate change. Now, this methane rule would have reduced the release of methane from oil and gas operations on federal land. Now, again, we're going to get rid of that. So who knew that making America great again would involve polluting the fuck out of it? Because it's exactly what we're doing. This is what the Trump administration and Republicans are doing. They don't care about the environment. And look, they don't even really care about jobs. Let me tell you why. Solar and wind are actually thriving industries with lots of great paying jobs. But again, they want to pull the subsidies from them as they are growing industries. Again, growing industries should get subsidies to help them. And then when they are successful, take the subsidies away. What you have right now is the oil and gas industry continuing to get subsidies. Now, at one point in the history of America, you actually had a need for oil and gas to have a subsidy because they were struggling. They were very new industries. And then we decided, you know what? You get to keep those subsidies in perpetuity, forever. No, that's not the way subsidies are supposed to work. They're supposed to be there to help a new industry in the national interest be able to get their footing. And then when they're successful, you take them away. That's why I'm okay with federal subsidies for solar and wind for now, until they become thriving industries, until they become profitable enough to stand on their own. Because if they can't stand on their own, then they're not good industries, and there's something wrong there. Oil and gas, they can stand on their own, and we continue to give them taxpayer money. It's ridiculous and insane. But as far as solar goes, it's one of the fastest growing industries in America. In a lot of places where you have solar plants and solar manufacturing, well, the wages are actually higher than a lot of the local wages for some of the other businesses. So it creates opportunity and ends up bringing everybody in that community up with those higher wages. And not only that, but, you know, you have it's a much safer place to work as well, compared to a coal mine where there's plenty of coal accidents. But instead of actually investing in those industries where there is a lot of job potential, you have Pruitt and Trump that are continuing to prop up a failing industry instead of ensuring that people working in those coal mines are retrained. Because this is what if I were in charge, this is what I'd want to do. I'd take everybody in the coal mines, and first of all, I'd make sure that they had enough to live while retraining them. You shut down the coal mines. Gone, done. No more coal mines. But you make sure that these people, you give them enough to survive on, and then you pay for their training and put them into brand new, better jobs. You guarantee them a job. There is a job waiting for you at a better place, with better pay, with health care, with all sorts of stuff. This is what we're going to do for you. All you have to do is give up the coal mine. You don't think people are going to jump for it? You don't think they're going to feel left behind when they personally say, okay, your industry is going out of business, but we're going to help you transfer to a better industry with better pay. You don't think that would be popular? Hell yes, it would. That's the only way to go. But unfortunately, we're not going in that direction. And this is what happens when you vote for Republicans, man. They put profits over people, pollution over clean air. And for those who might be Trump supporters now, just wait. Just wait until his policies begin to poison your river. Then we'll see how big of a Trump supporter you are. Okay. Speaking of subsidies, our next story, we're going to talk about subsidies that are going to corporations and things that don't need it. This is a theme, kind of a theme today. Local Pennsylvania schools are facing a massive budget shortage while the state itself continues to fund corporate welfare. Now, this is according to the Pennsylvania Watchdog. Now, there's an Erie school district that is short about $30 million this year and is asking the state for the money to basically fund basic school programs, as well as to help close their budget shortfall. Now, if they don't do this, of course, they would be subjected to devastating cuts. So basically, the school needs $30 million to function without cuts. Okay, well, however, the newest budget put out by Democratic Governor Tom Wolf happens to only allocate $1.5 million towards the Erie School District. They need 30, they're getting 1.5. Yikes. It's not very much, man. Hey, but look at it, man. You got to look at the situation. Pennsylvania, you got to tighten your belts, right? I mean, there's a jobs crisis. Things aren't going very well there. In fact, Pennsylvania for the last few years has actually ranked near the bottom of job creation. I mean, at one point in 2014, they ranked 50th in job creation in America. So they're not doing very well. So look, you could make an argument and say, man, we'd love to do it, but right now, we literally don't have the money. We don't have the revenue. Okay, so they don't have the money to fund education. But look at what they do have the money for. Wolf's budget includes $250 million in subsidies for the state's horse racing industry and billions more in corporate welfare for private sector businesses. And to that I say, oops. I guess when it comes to big corporations, man, they're more than happy to cough up enough money. But education, sorry, man, you're on your own. You need to make some devastating cuts because that's exactly what's going to happen. And unfortunately, Democrats and Republicans in the state are both very unwilling to stop funding this corporate welfare. Erie lawmakers who spoke with watchdog.org say that while they continue to push for more aid for local schools like Erie, for the most part, they're just fine with the status quo and want to continue preserving the corporate subsidies. Republican State Senator Dan Laughlin told Watchdog.org that finding enough money for Erie is number one on my to-do list. Oh, well, hey, that's great. He said everything should be looked at. He said in regard to cutting spending elsewhere, but he said, I'm unsure of the economic impact of taking too much out of the horse race fund. The horse race fund. Now, that of course, was echoed by Democratic Representative Florindo Fabrizio. While saying that he wants to help fund the schools, he too warned that lawmakers have to be, quote, very careful about raiding the horse racing fund. Now, look at the conversation that we're having here. We have horse racing versus education. Gambling entertainment versus a child's future. There should be zero questions. Raid that motherfucker. Raid it. Genghis Khan that shit. That's what I'd do. Look, it is $30 million out of nearly $250 million for the horse racing. You know what would happen if you took that $30 million out of the horse race fund? It would still have $220 million left, and you wouldn't have to slash education. Come on. Fabrizio continues. I'm not saying we can't look at it, he said, while arguing that the $250 million a year subsidy, quote, provides a lot for the Commonwealth. I'm sure it does. According to Biz Journal, Pennsylvania's horse racing industry does generate $1.6 billion in annual economic activity and supports nearly 23,000 jobs. However, this is at a huge drain to the taxpayers. That tax money, man, it could be spent in better places. Now, since 2004, Pennsylvania has provided about $250 million annually to fund horse racing, including cash prizes, mostly won by people that aren't even from Pennsylvania. According to the Pittsburgh Tribune-Review, millions of dollars have gone to people from around the world, including a Saudi prince and the Prime Minister of the United Arab Emirates. So those are the people that are getting this $250 million by winning the cash prize. So they take the money of the taxpayers, right? And then they put it up as a purse for horse racing. Oh, make your bets, make your bets. If you win, $250 million to the Saudi prince over there. Instead of funding education. This is insanity. It's not even going back into the local economy. Regular working people don't have the money to bet on horse races. Yet they're paying for it. This is grotesque. Now you have Bob Dick, who has an interesting name, who's a senior policy analyst with Commonwealth Foundation. Now, that's more of a right-wing sort of libertarianish think tank, I believe. Now, he criticized the subsidies. And he said, quote, if an industry is healthy, it shouldn't have to rely on government subsidies to thrive. Well, I would agree for the most part, except if you have a growing industry, something that does need a little help to get off the ground. I don't think horse racing needed a little help to get off the ground. It's been around forever. But it does need help, apparently. Now, he said, even with $250 million in subsidies each year, the racing industry has still seen a decline in attendance, wagers, and the number of breeders. So basically what you have here is a failing industry. People are not interested anymore, being propped up by government at the expense of the education for their children. This is what they have. This is what's going on. And according to the Commonwealth Foundation, Pennsylvania has spent $6 billion on corporate welfare since 2007. That is more than any other state in the union. They have spent more money than anybody on propping up corporations. So what did they get for this? Well, what did they get for that? Also, according to that same report, the $800 million on corporate welfare in just 2016, 2017, just 1 year, $800 million. What did they get for this? Not a lot. They are still 35th in job creation. And these subsidies haven't helped create new jobs, haven't helped fix the income disparity. It hasn't brought more income into the state coffers. No. This corporate welfare has done nothing. Dick. In all, Pennsylvania spent twice as much as the fourth and fifth highest corporate welfare spenders combined, both of which have larger populations in Pennsylvania, because, of course, the fourth and fifth happen to be Texas and New York. So, look, the corporations, they are raking it in at your expense, while the Erie School District needs $30 million and faces a $10 million deficit in the upcoming school year. Now, they needed $10 million to fill their budget hole. The extra $20 million, we're going to actually go into supplies and a little bit of renovation to make the school not fall apart. Can't do that, though. Now, here I have a quote from Erie School District Chief Financial Officer Brian Polito. Polito will transition to the role of superintendent. Now, he said, quote, "There is nothing much left to cut that isn't going to be devastating. The cuts could extend to eliminating arts, music, extracurricular activities, and other areas." So basically, again, and we're seeing this all over the country, let's eliminate arts so that we can continue to give these big corporations more money. Let's get rid of all the stuff that actually makes you a better, well-rounded person and teaches you things like critical thinking. Let's get rid of all of that because rich people need a little bit more money so we could prop up another giant corporation. Okay. Crony capitalism, man. And I don't care if a Republican does it. I don't care if a Democrat does it. We need to stop giving subsidies to companies that don't need it. Now, I understand startups, again, new technologies, but we're talking about horse racing. Horse racing. Little horsies running around. Ridiculous. No, you know what we need to do? We need to prioritize education so that these kids can grow up with opportunity, create new jobs, and add to the economy instead of prioritizing corporate profits in the name of jobs. Jesus, man. What are we doing in this country? We are killing everything that matters so we can give people another tax cut or another fucking subsidy to a company that doesn't need it. This is ridiculous. What the hell? But this is what we're doing. It's sad. Absolutely sad. All right. We got more stuff. More of your non-Trump block. All right. A recent study that came out shows the legalization of same-sex marriage in the United States has been linked to a drop in suicide among teenagers. Now, let me go into this study. So basically, researchers from Johns Hopkins University said that suicide attempts among high school students had fallen by an average of 7% following the implementation of legislation that protects the LGBT community, including things like allowing same-sex marriage. Now, they said that the impact was especially significant among gay, lesbian, and bisexual teenagers, for whom the passing of same-sex marriage laws was linked to a 14% drop in suicide attempts. That is not insignificant. That is quite a big drop. Now, according to the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, suicide is the second leading cause of death for those aged 15 to 24. So we're talking about just teenagers and young adults. Now, suicide rates, of course, are much higher among those who identify as what they call sexual minorities, people that are obviously lesbian, gay, bisexual. Now, that is, of course, higher than heterosexual students. Now, that kind of makes sense to me, right? Because, look, being a teenager was hard enough being a straight white guy. I know, right? But compared to these people, I got nothing to bitch about. Compared to somebody who's gay or bisexual or lesbian, I had nothing to bitch about. Because it's very, very difficult for people who are doing that. I couldn't imagine being gay or transgender back in high school. And remember, I was in high school not even 15 years ago. And I remember the word gay being thrown around all the time. Oh, you know, it's as an insult. Wasn't a term of endearment. Oh, you're so gay, you're such a fag, you're homo, you know, you're a terrible person, you're queer, whatever. What are you, queer? That got thrown around all the time. And it's not even 2 decades ago. I ain't that old. But I feel old enough. But it was everywhere. I mean, one of the worst things you could be in America in a small town was somebody who is lesbian, gay, or bisexual. But mostly gay when it comes to males. Well, let's be honest about that. And now, that is kind of ironic because a few people that I went to school with, kind of gay. Super gay, actually. But my point is, with that whole thing, is that, look, teen suicide, and I'm very lucky that it didn't happen to anybody at our school, has actually been a serious issue in the gay community all over America. So, now, in this study, co-author Julia Raifman and colleagues focused on the impact of same-sex marriage legislation. In 2004, Massachusetts became the first U.S. state to legalize same-sex marriage, and another 36 states followed suit before the policy became federal law in June of 2015, with, of course, that momentous decision, getting rid of the Defense of Marriage Act. Now, published in the journal JAMA, Pediatrics by researchers at Johns Hopkins, Harvard, and Boston Children's Hospital, the study scrutinized data collected by the CDC as part of its youth risk behavior surveillance system. Now, this is a survey that is conducted every 2 years. Now, the team analyzed figures from more than 760,000 students collected between 1995 and 2016, with data from states that passed a same-sex marriage law examined before and after the event. An approach, the researchers say, that took into account a host of differences existing between the two different states, between the many different states. In total, the data covered about 32 of the 35 states that had passed legislation to legalize same-sex marriage by the 1st of January 2015. This was in The Guardian, so they get their dates a little weird. In my opinion, anyway. The change in the rate of suicide attempts was then compared to that seen for the 15 states that did not. The analysis revealed that in the years before same-sex marriage became legal, the self-reported rate of one or more suicide attempts among high school students across the state was on average around 8.6% per year, with the figure reaching 28.5% among those who identified as gay, lesbian, or bisexual. That is incredibly high. That is nearly a third. 28 Jesus, man. Overall, states that legalized same-sex marriage saw attempted suicide rates fall by 0.6 percentage points against states that did not, corresponding to an average drop of 7%. The effect was found to last at least 2 years after the law was passed. So, no drop in suicide attempts, however, was found in states that did not enact these laws. Now, that part, kind of important, because here you have a trend. States that still denied gay marriage had zero drop in their suicide rates. They set up very, very high teen suicide rates. But states that allowed a same-sex marriage, that actually had a significant drop in the attempted suicide rate. So that's kind of significant. Now that trend, it seems, is largely the result of fewer suicide attempts by lesbian, gay, and bisexual teens. In states where same-sex marriage legalization was passed, suicide attempts fell by 4 percentage points on average, corresponding to a 14% drop compared to states where it was not. Raifman said, quote, "When we do focus on LGB adolescents, it does seem the effect is concentrated in that population." Again, makes sense. Look, laws that discriminate against gay people, of course, would increase the chance of someone in that community taking their own life. I mean, it makes logical sense. What you're doing when you outlaw it is you're basically telling somebody, hey, that who you are, that is wrong and illegal, and you should be illegal, what you're doing. Well, that's devastating to anybody, especially a teenage person. Of course. And, you know, what it also does is it increases the stigma and the bullying that accompanies to that, leading to, of course, more harassment, more bullying, more all that stuff, and, of course, more suicide, or people that end up hiding in the closet and become depressed because, look, nobody likes to hide who they are. Nobody should be forced into that closet. And unfortunately, when you outlaw same-sex marriage and you create this taboo and this culture of hatred towards people who are different, well, you're going to get that. You're going to get people who would rather hide than face this constant harassment. And that's, of course, part of that stigma. And that's, of course, also why it's important to point out that our vice president right now, he believes in something called gay reparative therapy. Now, what it does is that they use sometimes torture, like electroshock therapy, to try to cure people of their gayness. You can't cure something that's not a disease, man. And he doesn't understand it. In fact, gay reparative therapy, the people that used to run these places, some of them, they came out later and said, I'm totally gay and it doesn't work. 100% gay, it doesn't work. I know. We thought it might no, but we were fooling ourselves. Didn't work. And so, I mean, and yet our vice president still believes in this stuff. It's insanity. But, and look, you also can't make it illegal and hope it goes away. Look, legalizing same-sex marriage could be saving lives. And if that gets rolled back, oh, that's a disastrous day. We can't go backwards on this. I mean, the reason they did do it is that, you've got this 2,000-year-old book that some people really, really believe in, that is telling them that it's wrong. Now, what's funny is that Jesus says nothing about being gay. And it has a couple of passages back in the Old Testament, which a lot of people tend to ignore the shrimp part of the Bible, but they go to the you shall not lie with another man. That right now is informing policy, and it should not. That right there is what Vice President Mike Pence believes in. Most Christians don't. Most Christians right now don't care. But there is a very vocal minority of Christians who are like, yeah, deny the gays' rights. Who the fuck cares? Stay out of our lives. You want the government to stay out of our lives? Well, I want government to stay out of gay people's lives. Wouldn't that be nice? That's what I'm afraid of happening, is us going completely backwards on this whole thing. And it's going to end up hurting so many people. I mean, we've seen the suicide rates previous to the same-sex marriage ruling. That's what we're going back to. More people taking their lives because of how much society or some people in society say that we should hate these people for being different. No. You know what? We can't allow the beliefs of some people who believe in with a 2,000-year-old book or whatever book, whether it be the, Quran or whatever, or the Bible. We can't allow that book to dictate what the government does. We just can't. All right. Anyway. We got one more story for you guys. We have a report on the Flint crisis. Before I do that, I'm going to let FYI Nation go. So thank you for listening, everybody on FYI Nation. You want to catch the next story, hop over onto our YouTube channel, youtube.com/TYTNation. I'm not saying anything, but you should totally come here because there is a hop-in chat room. So, and thanks to everybody in there who are keeping on the conversations and things. Yeah, come on over. It's fun. So, youtube.com/TYTNation. Again, thanks, FYI Nation. We're going to let you go, and we'll see you guys tomorrow. So let me just end that there. And for everybody who's on our YouTube channel, one more story for you guys. We're going to talk about Flint. All right. I might get a little angry. Now, last week, a report came out about the Flint water crisis, in which tens of thousands of residents were exposed to lead-contaminated drinking water, and that the administration, the Snyder administration here in Michigan, had attempted to cover up. Now, this report was released by Republican Governor Rick Snyder's Civil Rights Commission, argues that systemic racism had played a major role in this crisis. Now, it's according to an article posted in Detroit Free Press. The 135-page report delves into the history of race and racism in the Flint area and argues that historical practices like redlining, or only renting and selling property to black residents in certain areas of the city, white flight to the suburbs, intergenerational poverty, and implicit bias, something that I talk about a lot, all helped lay the groundwork for an economic situation in the city in which an emergency manager was needed in the first place. So we're not talking about just what happened after the emergency manager. No, we're going back in the history and really painting. They go and paint the picture of why and how racism had affected the economy of Flint for decades on end to lead up to the current crisis. So that's a very interesting approach. Now, why they had to point this out is because the emergency manager was responsible for the decision to switch to the Flint River in the first place. They did so as a so-called cost-cutting move back in 2014. Of course, further reports say that it actually didn't cost that much less to be able to switch over to the Flint River. Now, that decision, of course, allowed the very highly corrosive Flint water to essentially leach lead from the city's old pipes into the drinking water. So the pipes, of course, hadn't been replaced. They were still old lead pipes. They had there's usually a layer there that protects and doesn't allow the water to leach that lead. Well, when you have corrosive water going through the pipes, it takes off that protective layer, and then it leaches all the lead that it can, and it goes right into the drinking water. Now, at the same time, state officials had failed to require corrosion control chemicals added to the water. Now, this is something that was already required by federal law. Hey, if you're going to use a corrosive water source, we're going to make you add something to the water that so that you don't leach lead into your drinking water from the pipes, so that people will not be drinking poison water. Well, that's a nice regulation. I'm glad it happened, but they didn't use it. Now, why didn't they do it? Well, that's kind of a good question, because in other places that is supposed to be a standard practice. Now, what made Flint so different from some of these other places? Oh, right. It's majority black. And that goes, of course, to the systemic racism. Systemic racism, of course, played a large part in the sluggish response to the crisis, and officials' attempts to delegitimize Flint residents' concern that problems with the water supply existed long before Snyder's administration acknowledged an issue, according to the report. Now, look, I remember covering a story somewhere last year, maybe even before that, where Flint residents were told by officials at town halls and meetings that they were lying about their water being contaminated. No, this water perfectly safe to drink, not contaminated whatsoever. You know what you were doing? You were stirring up trouble. You are lying. Well, remember, these people, they're like, man, something is weird with our water. It smells funny. It looks funny. We're getting rashes. We're getting burns. We're having a lot of health issues related to this water. Let's get it tested. Let's go to the city first. Ask them to test it. Oh, there's nothing wrong with the water. There's nothing wrong with the water. So then they go to independent testers that found huge levels of lead into the water. And when they go back to those officials from the city to say, hey, we got this independently tested. It's full of lead. Do something about it. The officials would just be like, you're lying. You're lying. It's not true. It's not true. This water is 100% safe to drink. Oh, yeah? If it's so safe, why don't you fucking drink it? I'm not thirsty. That's what happened. Okay, that's the cover-up part of this whole thing. Now, the commission believes in this report that we have answered our initial question. Was race a factor in Flint water crisis? Our answer is an unreserved and undeniable yes, according to the report. Holy crap. Now, further says, the people of Flint have been subjected to unprecedented harm and hardship, much of it caused by structural and systemic discrimination and racism that have corroded your city, your institutions, and your water pipes for generations. When the last of the civil lawsuits and attorney general criminal investigations are completed and relief dollars from state and federal sources are exhausted, what will remain is a city and its people who continue to fight against built-in barriers, but whose voices, as a matter of public right, must never be stifled or quelled again. Wow. Holy hell, man. There's nothing in that report that is incorrect. Now, the report's authors were people appointed by Governor Snyder. So you can't say that these were all the liberals. It's the little liberal report. Racism doesn't exist. No, these are Snyder guys. Okay? He picked these people. And furthermore, they say that the people of Flint did not enjoy equal protection of environment or public health laws, and that they have not had a meaningful voice in the decisions leading up to the Flint water crisis itself. In fact, the report says many argue that they had no voice because people did not listen to them. The officials ignored them and would denigrate them, ruin their reputations. That's what happened in Flint, and so much more. I mean, look, this report, I think, from what I've read of it anyway, barely scratches the surface of what's going on. The Flint water crisis is ironically, Herman Cain, it's like 2 layers deep. So, look, the report also claims that current state civil rights laws appear inadequate to address the deeply embedded institutional, systemic, and historical racism that we find at the root of this crisis. So, the question is, how do we fix it? Well, the report offers a litany of potential policy changes, including to the state's emergency manager law, and implies the emergency manager law is focused on cutting costs at the expense of people's well-being. Exactly. That was kind of the point, to put cutting costs over people. That's why the people of Michigan, myself included, voted to eliminate and overturn this law. And you know what happened? It was up for a referendum, and we overturned the law. But then Snyder came in, put it back up, and made it so that the people in Michigan could not overturn it again. So they usurped democracy to put back a law that usurps democracy. The people of Michigan said, we don't want this law. We think it's undemocratic. We think it will lead to many more issues than it purports to solve. And that it is unequal, it is applied unequally to cities that are minority controlled, that are mostly minority. And that's exactly what they've been using it for, to go after cities that are majority African American. That's why it's racist. But anyway, the report said that the emergency manager law should be amended to offer local representation alongside that manager with the ability to appeal an adverse decision, and that locally elected government should still play a role in the emergency manager's decisions, among other recommended changes to the law. But if it were up to me, I would eliminate this law because of what it does. It overturns democracy. You end up having way more problems with this law than without it. And sure, cities will run into fiscal issues. I mean, it's not like Michigan has been growing all that much when it comes to the economy. Look, when the car industry, the automobile industry, basically tanked over the last decade, Michigan has not pulled itself out. It's still bad here. Maybe not as bad as some other places. Like, for example, Pennsylvania or places like Appalachia. But it's not great here either. The auto industry, leaving, outsourcing, stuff like that, has had a terrible, detrimental effect on the Michigan economy. Now, commission members have also recommended the governor's office invite experts on implicit bias to train the cabinet and all state departments, including the Department of Health and Human Services and Department of Environmental Quality. Now, I like that idea. I think people do need to know about implicit bias. And when we talk about that, when you talk about racism, there are 2 types of people who are racist, right? There is the Klan wearing, the Klan hood wearing racists who are openly racist. And then there are people that have implicit bias. These people aren't necessarily racist. They don't necessarily know that they're doing anything wrong, but they have certain biases from certain stereotypes. It's not fair to call them racist also, because they have this bias and they don't necessarily know any better. So when you actually tell them about this, when you actually show them that they do have implicit bias, when they realize they have this bias, they go, oh shit, you're right. I never thought differently than that. This is what I heard growing up. This is what I heard from this. This is what I heard from Fox News. Or this is what I heard from the news or from my friends. I never realized that what this was actual racism. Oh man, I'm going to stop doing that. And look, we all have implicit bias. It's not a bad thing necessarily to have, as long as you realize that you have it and you start to actually make a change in that. And so I think it's great when you talk about implicit bias. And it's not even something that is always, and again, it doesn't make you a bad person to have this implicit bias, right? It could be something as, feeling a little bit fearful when you see a black person on an elevator, or when you're riding with a black person on the elevator. You see some women clutch their purses a little tighter. Doesn't make her a Klan wearing, a hood wearing racist. But there's that implicit bias. And it gets factored into things like employment. You see somebody with a black sounding name, and they've done studies on this as well, where somebody with a black sounding name sends in a resume, the exact same resume of somebody with a white sounding name. That white sounding name gets a callback. The black sounding name does not. That's bias. That is an inherent bias. And it's also institutional racism as well, based on old stereotypes. That's the stuff that you need to address. That's the stuff that you need to talk about. It's the stuff that needs to get fixed. So again, I love the idea of them bringing in people that are experts on explaining implicit bias to other people so that we can actually solve this problem and we can actually promote more equality. Now, as far as these recommendations, there's some I would go a little step further. I'd start throwing people in jail. Starting with the emergency managers all the way up to the governor. Anybody that has a hand in this, knowingly, that helped cover up these crimes, gone. You can't just get away with poisoning an entire fucking city to try and save a few bucks. It's grotesque. It's grotesque. And then to try to cover it up by blaming the EPA, by blaming bureaucracy. No. You don't get to get away with that. No. Bureaucracy? What bureaucracy? That was one of Governor Snyder's excuses. Oh, no, it's bureaucracy's fault that this happened. The emergency manager had sole control of the city. That's what the emergency manager does. You put him there. The buck stops with you, dude. He used that power that you gave him, and people ended up getting poisoned. No. You throw the book at them. You throw the bookshelf. Hell, I'd throw the fucking library at them. It's gross. It's racist. And it's negligent. And it's going to have impacts on the rest of these people's lives. You do not recover from lead poisoning. That damage stays with you forever. Now, look, it's not a surprise for me to see that racism played a huge role in this crisis, whether or not it's implicit bias or not. When you stop caring about your fellow man, when it comes to because of the color of their skin and because of ridiculous stereotypes you might have heard, it ends up having the effect of dehumanizing people. When you dehumanize someone, a population, it allows you to be able to put your own profit over the well-being of people that you're supposed to be helping. And that, my friends, is not a good thing. It's something that we need to fix. And something that I think right now, what happened in Flint deserves more than bringing in a couple of experts to talk about bias. I think there needs to be jail time involved. You shouldn't get away with poisoning a city. Anyway, those are my thoughts. Again, I'm just a lib, so don't listen to me. I mean, come up with your idea of what should happen on your own. But that's all I got for you guys today. I want to thank you for going around the nation with me today. Really appreciate it. Thank you guys for, watching, for chatting, for supporting truly independent progressive media right here on TYT Nation, part of the TYT network. Of course, we're very, very glad. We're very proud to be part of the Young Turks network, as we've been for a long time. But I like to remind people, because sometimes people are like, "Are you sure you're part of TYT?" Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure. So we're very proud and we're very happy to be part of the Young Turks. So, and of course, I'm very happy and proud to have you guys as viewers as well. Thank you so much for your support, for your viewership. We love you guys. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place, right here, 3 p.m. Eastern. TYT Nation, please like and subscribe. Please share. Check out the clips later on. They'll be up on YouTube. Thank you so much. Love you all. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, TYT Nation.